don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've kind of become an AI bro. I never thought I would see the day. You know my old videos. I was one of the biggest skeptics of all this stuff. I just didn't really see the value. Hell, when I first tried Copilot, it annoyed me because it was overriding the TypeScript autocomplete that I thought was more accurate and reliable. That's changed massively over time. From falling in love with Cursor and the power of their tab autocomplete, as well as Command I, Command K, and all the other cool things you can do, to building T3 Chat and seeing how useful these new agents and models can be, to all the stuff that I talk about here on the channel, AI has really changed how I think about things and, more importantly, how I build things. And now, when I have conversations with my friends, many of whom are still skeptics of AI, I almost feel a bit insane. It's just like, I was right there with you. I saw these things. They didn't feel like that big a deal, and I tried them, and they weren't that big a deal, and I moved on. And then I gave it a more serious go when the tools got better, and now it's so clear the future is very different than we previously thought. I'm not saying AI is going to come in and replace everything. I'm just saying it will meaningfully adjust the work that we do as developers in a way that we should talk about. This is a thing I've been feeling for a while. So when I saw this article pop up on Hacker News, I really wanted to talk about it. I started reading it, immediately realized I had to share it with you guys. So now we're doing a video. This article is posted on the Fly.io blog. I love Fly, one of my favorite ways to deploy servers. That said, they are not sponsoring this video in any way, shape, or form. We do have bills to pay though. So a quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll dive into why all my AI skeptic friends are insane. You know what's worse than reviewing good code? Reviewing bad code. You know what's worse than reviewing bad code? Reviewing your own code. And that's why I'm so thankful for today's sponsor, CodeRabbit. That's a PR that I made. Oh yeah, that's kind of the point. I put up a PR that's meant to handle some stream error stuff when you're resuming a stream on T3 Chat, and I wrote a very simple description. We'll keep long timeouts from happening. CodeRabbit summarized the PR for me, drew up a whole walkthrough about how the changes work, what files they affect, and even a sequence diagram describing the order of events that's super handy for these more complex workflow changes. But more importantly, it went through the code and left actual comments on things that I should change. It even catches bugs. In my editor right now, I have a change I was working on, and I used their new VS Code extension to review it before I even put up the PR, and it caught 2 mistakes. This is so useful. Most of the sponsors I talk about are a slight improvement to the way you might be doing things. CodeRabbit's actually changed how I think about code review, and in a world where AI is generating more and more of our code, it's so helpful to have a tool like CodeRabbit keeping you from shipping mistakes. CodeRabbit's probably prevented us from shipping 40 plus bugs to T3 Chat, so if you like T3 Chat, you should thank them for it. Check them out today at soidev.link/CodeRabbit. Before we go too far, I want to shout out Thomas for writing this. There were a couple people who were flaming him for this article. That's actually part of why I saw it. They are mad because he's a very well-respected person in the data world, but he is now coming around to AI, and a lot of data people, funny enough, are anti-AI, so they've been mean to him about it. I'm thankful they were, though, because it made it so I saw the post and immediately started falling in love with it and wanted to share these points with you guys. So let's dive in. A heartfelt provocation about AI-assisted programming. Tech execs are mandating LLM adoption. That's bad strategy, but I get where they're coming from. This is something I've been seeing more and more of, like companies say, like, we need all teams to introduce agents to their workloads. Yeah. Some of the smartest people I know share a bone-deep belief that AI is a fad. It's the next iteration of NFT mania. I've been reluctant to push back on them because, well, they're smarter than me, but their arguments are unserious and they are worth confronting. Extraordinarily talented people are doing work that LLMs already do out of spite. I very much agree here. I want to talk about the mania bit first and foremost because it's very real. I don't know how many of y'all were around or online for the Web3 thing. We're going to go a bit further back to the GraphQL bubble. This one isn't talked about a whole lot because it doesn't seem like it was that big a deal, but in the moment it was very real. GraphQL was an alternative way for us to think about how we structured our APIs and access data from different devices and clients, usually user-side clients. So if you had a complex application like Facebook and you wanted really complex relations in it, like you had a post that had comments, that had commenters, and the commenters had their own relations of like, are they a friend with you or not, and all of these different pieces, a traditional REST endpoint is very ill-flexible and doesn't do a great job of exposing the data in a way the client would benefit from. And GraphQL is built at Facebook to make it easier to define your APIs as a graph and then access that data in your clients so that the client could figure out what data it needed without having to define new endpoints every time they wanted to change the UI slightly. And it was revolutionary for companies that had thousands of engineers and really complex graph data problems. It became so ubiquitous that it was basically the standard for how applications were built for a few years. And out of that, a bunch of different startups happened, including things like Gatsby, which was GraphQL for blogs. I shit you not. It was really a static site builder for React, but what it effectively was in implementation is a GraphQL API for defining static pages. Nonsense. So you had Gatsby for your blogs. You had GraphQL, which was a database to GraphQL tool to like turn your existing database into a GraphQL endpoint. They eventually became Prisma. And that's also why Prisma was so slow for a while, because it was still GraphQL internally. We had WonderGraph. I still can't really describe what they do, and I doubt they can either. They call it GraphQL Module Federation, so you can split your GraphQL stuff across different things. It seems like a problem for 5 companies that would be pretty legit for those 5 companies. There was Asura, which I hated. I have my whole diagram, like GraphQL goes here, not here, where people are trying to put it in front of their databases. There were so many of these. There was just this huge window of GraphQL-focused startups because it seemed like we were moving off of traditional APIs and to GraphQL. So we would need the Postgres of GraphQL. We would need the AWS of GraphQL. We would need the Datadog of GraphQL. We would need all of these different things for the GraphQL world. But it turned out GraphQL was only actually useful to a very, very small subset of the world. These really big Fortune 50 companies that had these complex data architectures. As such, the best case for most of these companies is they could have like 20 customers. There was no world where these should have been VC funded and should have been as huge as they were. If you have been around for any of these bubbles, GraphQL, Web3, NFTs, even like the old .com bubble back in the day, where this thing was so much better than what we were used to or had so much potential that we way overreacted and pretended everyone would be using this thing in the future, you'll be inherently skeptical. And I was bit by this too. I was in Y Combinator during the NFT wave, and a ton of the companies in our batch were all doing weird Web3 stuff. I knew 4 different companies that were doing auth for Web3, and I only knew one company that would be a potential consumer for auth for Web3. They were inventing things no one needed for products that didn't exist. It was so common. And if you've been around for these different bubbles, you're going to be skeptical of anything that smells like one. So the fact that I can name 10 companies that are doing agents as a service for writing the code and hosting the agents for you, all of which are just doing something you can do yourself on Cloudflare relatively easily. I'm not saying Vercel is a bad business. I'm saying having 50 Vercels would be a bad thing. And the fact that we have hundreds of these companies all doing the same thing for a market that's barely started shows that there is a bubble here for sure. And if you immediately treat the whole thing as bad when you see a bubble, I understand. If you saw this GraphQL bubble and said, you know what, I'm going to avoid GraphQL entirely because this seems like a hype machine that isn't doing anything, I would understand. The problem is AI is actually really fucking useful. So despite the fact that it is a hype bubble, there is real value. If you were to like graph this to be like, you have value as a chart and you have hype as another bar, like how much are people talking about it? How much are people making companies about it? Your hype to value ratio. I would say GraphQL was something like this. The value, it was there for really big companies, but not that much. And the hype relative was huge. This was destined for failure right when it happened. There was no world in which the low value prop of GraphQL would ever be worth the amount of companies and time and money being spent creating all of that product. So for GraphQL, these numbers were bad. How about Web3? I'll wrap NFTs into this. It's hard to measure the value of Web3 stuff relative to GraphQL. I'm going to be controversial and put it slightly higher because I still conceptually really like Bitcoin. I think the idea of a currency that is mathematically proven and not regulated by a government is really cool and awesome. And if I was to have held all my Bitcoin instead of spending it like a currency, I wouldn't be a YouTuber. I'd be a billionaire living in the middle of nowhere. But I would spend my Bitcoin because I liked it as a currency. when it stopped being a currency and started being a thing you would hold and trade and put crappy JPEGs into, it all fell apart really fast. So I'm probably going to have to change the scale of things here because the titles are too low. The Web3 hype was absurd. Even if the value was slightly higher, the hype was to a level that was unfathomable and obviously very, very bad and could never live up to what people wanted. There are cases that make crypto cool, like stable coins for people outside of the US and whatnot, but nothing compared to the hype machine that I saw in the funding rounds that I watched happen. It was a shit show. So what about AI? Here's the problem. AI is at least as valuable as we pretended Web3 was. And if the hype levels were the same as they were for Web3, I would actually say it's reasonable for how useful this stuff is. Unlike NFTs, my mom actually uses AI to ask questions and answer things for her. NFTs being a feature on Twitter was cringe and dumb. AI giving you better answers on Google search is actually kind of useful. So I would argue that by the end of next year, most internet users will use AI in a meaningful way at some point on the average day. Unlike Web3 and NFTs, which most people will never encounter at any point. But this is the problem. Because AI is actually useful, the hype has gone beyond what my chart can possibly represent. So if you are judging these things based on how absurd the size of the hype is, you're going to miss out because previous hype bubbles being way bigger than the value that was added was bad. This was terrible. The problem is we finally have something that's actually really valuable that's coming out of these places. But since the hype machine's gone way beyond belief, many people are treating it the same way they treated things before. And that sucks. And that's what I want to be here to try and do, is I want to both make fun of the people claiming they have 12 agents writing all their code for them, but also point out that tab completing cursor will make you much more effective at your job in using things to give your editor more context on the work you're doing, and maybe the occasional background agent with something like Devin or Codex to work on something in the background while you're doing something else. These things can actually make us more effective as engineers. A lot of the work we do is tedious and boring. This can make a lot of the tedious and boring work go away. Or you can keep doing it out of spite, which is what the article said. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of fun as we go deeper in this. This is a bold statement from the author. All progress on LLMs could halt today, and LLMs would still remain the second most important thing to happen over the course of my career. Bold ass statement. I like this caveat though, because I think this is really important. He's only discussing the implications of LLMs for developers. For art, music, and writing, honestly, even I am the same place here. I don't know what the impact in those fields is going to be. I am disappointed that people like AI music at all, because whenever I hear it, it's just the cringiest, most stupid shit. Using AI to do some cool things in music is fun, like using it to redub a voice or rip a vocal track out of an old song so you can use it for something else. The same way Copilot can assist us in development, I am excited to see art tools with AI assistance like that, but we're not even close to there yet overall. It'll be interesting to see where that all goes, but this is not meant to be a discussion of how AI changes the arts. This is a discussion of how AI changes our lives as developers. The author qualifies himself a bit here. They've been shipping software since the 1990s. I was born mid-1990s, so I am much less qualified than they are in that regard. He started out in a boxed, shrink-wrapped C code base, survived an ill-advised C++ phase, lots of Ruby and Python tooling, some kernel work, a whole lot of server-side C, Go, and Rust. However you define serious developer, he qualifies, even if only on one of the lower tiers. Sounds like a pretty high tier dev for me, especially if they're at Fly.io right now. That team is cracked. He knows his stuff. This is not a random person who's vibe coding their way through life, who just learned how to code a year ago and doesn't even have a degree. This is someone who's been doing this shit for longer than most of y'all have been alive, myself included. Yeah, some kernel work, it says a lot. Like, what? Yeah. Level setting. First, we need to get on the same page. If you were trying and failing to use an LLM for code 6 months ago, you're not doing what most serious LLM-assisted developers are doing right now. There's also a call out here of, God forbid you were using Copilot 2 years ago, because that was not representative of what AI was capable of. This is even crazy to me. Like just a few days ago when I was working on the Snitchbench stuff, I would say the first pass on it was 50-50 between me and Claude 4 / tab complete / all the other AI stuff for just the script that ran all of the chats. The second part which was the using Gemini to analyze all of those scripts. That file is 500 lines on the dot. I did not write a single line of code in this file. This entire file was written by Command I, the generator thing here. This was agentically written by me giving a basic description of what I wanted it to do, and it made it work first try. It even wrote the system prompt for me. I wrote none of this code. That is crazy. The fact that I wrote a giant file in a code base that I actually kind of cared about. I wanted this to be a good representation of how to run these types of tests. That's insane. The fact that it could pass my bar, run correctly. I could have written this myself, and I started writing things like it before. Do you know how useful that is? That I could have this generating in the background while I was responding to tickets with T3 chat, because we were in the middle of the migration stuff while I was doing this. It's so cool. And it's not just cool, it's very real and practical. And this file isn't a file that's like super critical and important to things that are running in production. If it was, I would have at the very least reviewed it thoroughly. This is a script that I'm running locally. Things that wouldn't have been worth doing before suddenly are, because 500 lines of throwaway code went from an annoying weekend project to a single prompt. That's nuts. That's insane. And it couldn't do that 6 months ago even. I tried. I was very amused at how bad these things were at that stuff. We're in a different world now. People coding with LLMs today are using agents. Agents get to poke around at your code base on their own. They author files directly. They run tools. They compile code, run tests, and iterate on the result. They can also pull arbitrary code from the tree or from other trees online into their context windows. They can run standard Unix tools to navigate the tree and extract information. They can interact with Git. They can run existing tools like linters, formatters, model checkers, and most importantly, they can make essentially arbitrary tool calls that you set up through MCP. This is the pill I have not taken just yet. I did just set up my first ever MCP inside of Cursor. MCP tools. I added context 7 because it seems really useful for getting docs for different libraries and things automatically. I'm excited to see how it behaves when I want better docs for a thing. It's made by Josh Tried Code and some of the other guys over at Upstash, and I'm very excited to see how it benefits, but I haven't had a chance to write any code since I added it because I've been so disgustingly busy. I will say that the word agent is still way too vague and doesn't describe any specific thing. The concept is AI that is running autonomously and doing things, but it is effectively AI with tool calls doing more than one request. That's how I choose to think about it and explain it to people, is instead of you give a request and it generates text as a response, it's now you give it a prompt and it will call itself, it will call tools, it will run multiple things, it will do multiple steps, it will do more than one thing to get the stuff done. I like that framing from chat, actually, from Dogpaw Hat. Agents are models calling tools in a loop. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The code in an agent that actually does stuff with code is not itself AI. This is another important piece that people don't seem to get. It's not like it is hallucinating how you have things implemented in your code base. It's calling a tool that is real code that is used to access files in the code base. So when it wants to know what files use a function, it's calling a tool that uses TypeScript's IntelliSense to find where the references are, or it might just be calling a grep call across your code base for all the things that match that shape and find all the files that are relevant. But it's using real code that is being triggered by the LLM using a tool call shape. I discussed that in depth in my safety video. If you haven't watched that, I put way too much work and I highly recommend it. One of my best videos, in my opinion. The tool calls are real code humans wrote to make the AI more effective. It's not that the AI magically learned how to keep track of every file in your code base. The AI has the tools to access the right files, the same way we do as humans, the same way we will Command-Shift-F to find the thing we're looking for, or use grep in our terminal, or go to the docs to read to find the thing we're looking for. AI now has code that was written by a human to allow the AI to go do those things. And the code that does that is also hilariously simple. It's wired to ground truth about programming in the same way that a makefile is. You could write an effective code agent in a weekend. Its strengths would have more to do with how you think about and structure builds in linting and test harnessing than with how advanced O3 or Sonnet have become. Yeah. A lot of the improvement has been since Claude 3.5, the tools we build and give the LLMs access to are better because 3.5 was way better at calling those tools. We were suddenly incentivized to make them better. But the biggest model groundbreaking thing in the tool calling and all this we're talking about today was 3.5. Because Claude 3.5 unlocked all of this stuff and gave us incentives to build better tools. But you could go back to the old model and still have a much better experience in Cursor than you did a year ago, just because the tools they built for it to have access to have gotten so much better. Another call out. Making a request on a ChatGPT page or T3 chat, love you guys, and then pasting the results, the broken code you get into your editor, you're not doing what the AI boosters are doing. And it's no wonder that you're talking past each other. If you see these people saying AI's changed how they work, they're using Claude and Cursor and ChatGPT and all these things to make themselves way more effective as engineers, then you go to ChatGPT or T3 chat and you're like, hey, implement this for me. And it gives you a bunch of code that doesn't work for your setup at all. And you go try it and it's broken. And you're like, wow, why does anyone care? I understand why you think this sucks. But the fact that some people are using all of these tools in Cursor with MCPs, doing docs calls, and you're just writing a quick query on ChatGPT, you're not doing the same thing. You're talking about it like you are, and the conversation isn't happening. And I really like this call out because I think it's really important. This is a piece I missed myself. I was doing things the simple way. And the more I've been using the depth of it, the more impressed I've been with what you can do with it. I love this chart. This chart, as soon as I saw it in the article, it got burned so deeply in my brain that I almost used it in another conversation about entirely unrelated stuff today. This is the quadrant of things based on importance and fun. There are things that are fun and important. There are things that are tedious and important. There are things that are fun and pointless and tedious and pointless. I would argue my snitch bench benchmark falls squarely in fun but pointless. But there was also parts of that were tedious, that were blocking the fun parts. But then there's work that's actually really fun, like changing the sync engine on T3 chat over the convex. I wrote a lot of that code, almost the vast majority of it, certainly, myself. That was like a 10,000 line change. That was a shitload of work. But then there was a tedious thing where I had to change how we were wrapping wait until calls. And an AI agent could go do all of that for me. I really like this framing. Ideally, we spend our time in this top right quadrant doing the fun, important things. And if we can get the tedious stuff out of the way, life gets a lot better. LLMs can write a large fraction of all the tedious code you'll ever need to write. And most code on most projects is tedious. LLMs drastically reduce the number of things you'll ever need to Google. They'll look things up themselves. Most importantly, they don't get tired. They're immune to inertia. I can't tell you how many mistakes I made because I was so deep on tedious changes. And 5 hours in, I'm just being lazy about it and writing slop, absolute garbage code. The agent's quality doesn't go up or down depending on how late in the day it is. That's a huge thing. Think of everything you've ever wanted to build but didn't. You tried to hone in on some first step. If you'd been in the limerent phase of a new programming language, you'd have started writing. We've all been there, where you have a new language we're falling in love with, and we have the side project idea, and we dive in just because we like the programming language so much, or we want to learn it more. But if you weren't, you put it off, and it slowly gets pushed back until it never happens. I have a long list of those projects still myself. I can feel my blood pressure rising, thinking of all the bookkeeping and Googling and dependency drama of a new project. This part I can't relate to. This is part of the fun part for me. I like the scaffolding and getting all the parts together right. It's just how I am. But other people hate it, which is why things like Create 3 app did so well, because people just want to get started on the thing, knowing the stack is good enough. LLMs can be instructed to just figure that all out for you. Often, it will drop you precisely at that golden moment where shit almost works. And development means tweaking code and immediately seeing things work better. That dopamine hit is why I code. I have a silly example of that in my index file for the LLM benchmark. This LLM benchmark runs by taking 4 markdown files and doing the first one, then the second, and the third, and the fourth to a model, getting a response, and creating a fake message chain with that given model. So I have, all the way up here somewhere, these 4 prompts. I read these all from the markdown file. This whole function written by Claude. This function grabs all the files from the directory, filters them, sorts them, outputs them. Initially, they weren't coming in the right order. It was coming in 4, 3, 2, 1. So I told Claude, go sort it by the number in the file name. So it did. And it was still coming in 4, 3, 2, 1. Turns out in this case, it was actually my bad code. I had input message.pop instead of .shift. But the moment where I realized that and fixed it and then ran it and it worked, that's why we do this. The feeling of having a giant pile of code doing this absurd thing you shouldn't be doing, being so close to it working, it's not quite there, and then you find the piece and you fix it and it works and you smile. It's the same feeling I get when I land a really hard trick on a skateboard. It just feels good. And AI can make it way easier to get to that point. You can sometimes even go over it and like make the thing just work for you. But the fact that they can drop you right there, right before the thing works, and you can still use your experience as an engineer to do that last piece, it feels so good. It really does. And I feel like I get more of those, oh shit, it works now moments than I used to, because all the things that lead up to that moment can, for the most part, now be automated. Not all of them, but a large portion, a significant part of that work can now be done with these tools. The concern I have is when people miss that and they expect the AI to fix it for them. The thing I always say is, rather than asking the AI to fix the bug, ask it about the bug or what might be causing the bug. But in this case, I just read the code because I had it fix the thing I thought was the bug. And as I was reading through, I noticed the mistake. But ideally, you're not relying on the AI to find everything that's wrong for you. You're relying on the AI to help you scaffold the environment where the thing can go wrong, and then you fix the thing inside of it. It might be smart enough to know what the recent changes were. That's just running backwards. What might be causing that? Looking at your code, I can see the issue. It's a problem on line 210 where you're using pop. I could have just asked the model and it would have solved this for me. But I didn't because I wanted to solve it myself. But that's the fun part, the detective work to figure out what's wrong. And sometimes the AI will be wrong about it too, and that's fine. But like, all of this is so unbelievable to me that things like this are this good now is just crazy. There is a downside though. Sometimes gnarly stuff needs doing, but you don't want to do it. So you refactor unit tests, soothing yourself with the lie that you're doing real work. But an LLM can be told to go refactor all your unit tests. An agent can occupy itself for hours, putzing with your tests in a VM, and come back later with a PR. If you listen to me, you'll know that. You'll feel worse yak shaving. You'll end up doing real work. This is one of the craziest things for me, is a lot of the stuff I would do, like fixing type errors and these different things, or cleaning up our weird test cases if we were doing more unit testing than we currently are. What's left when the AI is doing all that stuff is the real hard work. It's actually something I've talked a lot about with the Devon guys, where a lot of people who use Devon, which is the like AI agent that you tell, go fix this issue in Slack and it will go do it and put up a PR. We're not using it yet for T3 chat because things that we would trust it to do, like fixing our tests, are so easy to do now that we just do it in cursor ourselves. We just command I say, go do the thing. And it usually gets it right first try. We read it, we run it locally, we push it. We're probably at the point where we could start doing it with Devon, but now it's saving us 10 minutes of work instead of the 4 hours that it would have been doing it all yourself before. And you would have felt really good doing that work. So it's important keeping the code base pristine. No, it's not. It is, but it's not. And now these tools make it easier for us to generate the busy work instead of doing it to feel busy. This is going to be the real risk with jobs too. I don't think a bunch of people will be fired because they're doing nothing but maintaining unit tests and now AI is fixing it for them. But I do think teams are less likely to hire if the average employee can do way more work. And now everyone's favorite counter. You have no idea what the code actually is. I did not expect to be called out here. Are you a vibe coding YouTuber? Can you not read code? If so, astute point. Otherwise, what the fuck is wrong with you? Okay, I love this author. I love this so much. You've always been responsible for what you merged to main. You were 5 years ago, and you are tomorrow, whether or not you're using an LLM. If you build something with an LLM that people will depend on, read the code. In fact, you'll probably do more than that. You'll spend 5 to 10 minutes knocking it back into your own style. LLMs are showing signs of adapting to local idioms, but we're still not there. I can't tell you how many times I have had code spit out in these agents and it's just not prettier formatted or does weird things I don't like with casing and naming variables and too many comments and all that. I usually will go clean it all up. To go back to this code base, for example, the index file, which is the actual thing that runs most of the stuff, I combed over this a lot. Analyze snitching, I didn't write a single line in. This is their style. I did prettier format it when it was done, but I didn't write a line of this fucking code. If I wanted to make changes to it, I'd probably go fix it first. There are people who are anti-code review, and I've always found them insane. But I will say, if you're anti-code review, if you think everyone on your team should just be able to merge to main without anyone looking at the changes, don't use AI. I don't want you to be more effective at your job. I want you to keep suffering in silence in your corner with no users. Those people are absurd. They show up in my replies all of the time when I talk about code review culture stuff because I think code review is incredibly important. It is essential to how everything I do ever in my career has run. And even like Uncle Bob says it's silly and dumb. And I think those people are mad. All of that aside, review your code, whether a coworker made it, you made it, or an LLM made it. Code review is important. You should do it. People complain about LLM-generated code being probabilistic. I'll never pronounce that right. Just go with it. It's based on probabilities. It isn't. It's code. It's not yak output. It's knowable. The LLM might be stochastic, but the LLM itself does not matter. What matters is whether you can make sense of the result and whether your guardrails hold. Massive. This means more than ever, things like TypeScript and good type definitions are important, because if the LLM generates code that doesn't match your type defs, you know the code's less likely to be right, and you're probably going to try and figure it out and fix it. I will also admit, as much as I don't like to, unit testing and test-driven development might make more sense than it used to as well. I hate to admit it, but if you have a 10-line of code test with a basic input and output, and you're confident that if that passes, the code is right, that is really useful for these agents, especially if they can run the test and see if the output's right or not, and then rerun again if they change the code when it's not. More on this. Someone called out how nice it is to use TanStack Start and TanStack Router, which are still very new TypeScript experiences, just tabbing away in Cursor or whatever IDE you're using. How are LLMs so good at it while it's still quite new? It's because it's designed with types in TypeScript. That's huge. The fact that the type definitions are all inferred top to bottom and give you this information in the IntelliSense system in your editor means the AI agents can see it and use it while they do the work, and the output is more likely to be correct. Or at the very least, you can see when it's wrong and go make the change. You should have systems to identify when these things are breaking in your code. If you don't, fix that first. And once you fix that, go try the AI tools again, because you might be surprised. If I was living in a vanilla JS jQuery code base with weird bindings to and from everything, I would not be comfortable command-Iing and telling Cursor or whatever other tool to go write a bunch of code, because it might just not work and it'll be much harder to notice. But if you have decent tests, or better, you have really good types, those guardrails will be a very useful thing to know if that code is or isn't functioning. Reading other people's code is part of the job. I would argue you should be reading more code than you're writing on average. The fact that that isn't the case terrifies me, because it means inherently the majority of code isn't reviewed. If you are not reading more code than you are writing in a given day, and all of your coworkers are in the same boat, that means there is code merging that hasn't been read, and that is terrifying. Fix that. Review your code. Review a lot of code. Go out of your way to review too much code. You should feel sick of all the code you're reviewing. If you don't, you're not reviewing enough. If you can't metabolize the boring, repetitive code that the LLM generates, that's a skill issue on your part. How are you handling the chaos human developers turn out in a deadline? Yeah. If you think repetitive code generated by Claude is bad, you haven't seen the slop I have seen when a deadline's coming up. The last month or so, Gemini 2.5 has been my go-to. Their go-to. I'm on Claude 4 now. Almost nothing it spits out for me will merge without edits. I'm sure that's a skill issue to getting a state-of-the-art model to one-shot a feature plus merge, but I don't care. I like moving the code around and chuckling to myself when I delete all the stupid comments. I have to read the code line by line anyways. Very, very real. When I'm working in my real code bases and I let the AI generate the first pass, it's just that. It's a first pass. It's a starting point that often actually works. And then I'm going in and fixing things. And what's funny is I've actually worked with my team like this for a while, where I will do a really crappy first pass on a thing to show what I expect and how I expect it to work, put up a draft PR for my team to see. Sometimes they'll take the code, make some changes and merge it. Sometimes they'll see what I was doing, close my PR, and go make a better one actually doing the stuff. All of these are awesome. I support all of these workflows. And if you treat the AI the same way, you'll have a really good time. If you don't, if you expect it to do everything for you, you're just lazy. What about hallucination? If hallucination matters to you, your programming language has let you down. Whew! I love this author. Oh, I was touching on that earlier, but they killed it. Agents lint. They compile and run tests. If their LLM invents a new function signature, the agent should see the error. They can feed it back to the LLM, which says, oh, right, I totally made that up, and then it tries again. You'll only notice this happening if you're watching the chain of thought log that your agent generates. Don't do it. This is why I like Zed's agent mode. It begs you to tab away and let it work, and then pings you with a desktop notification when it's done. I didn't know it did that. That's actually really cool. I'm sure there are still environments where hallucination matters, but hallucination is the first thing developers bring up when someone suggests using LLMs, despite it being a more or less solved problem. But the code is shitty, like that of a junior dev. Does an intern cost $20 a month? Because that's what Cursor costs. Obligatory, I'm an investor in Cursor, account for bias there. But Cursor, Windsurf, Zed in their agent mode, Copilot inside of VS Code and all the crazy stuff you can do with that there, all of these things have gotten really, really good. I have an intern that I'm paying a lot more than $20 a month, and he does incredible things, but he's also using these tools to do those incredible things. So it's, yeah, the fact that you can get code that is of the same bar as a junior dev, but most importantly, you don't feel bad yelling at them when it sucks, because that's the worst part of a junior dev, is the fifth time in a day they do something stupid, you feel bad because you know you're demoralizing them, saying, hey, that's not good enough. Hey, can you try that again? Hey, we can't merge that. It feels bad. And it feels extraordinarily bad to close their PR because it's not good enough. An AI will not give a fuck if you close their PR. An AI will not give a fuck if you tell it it needs to try again. An AI will not feel personally about it. And that is awesome. It's like an intern that is way faster, knows where everything in your code base is already, and you can tell to do whatever you want over and over again and won't get burnt out or tired of it. And you won't feel bad telling it to fuck off because its code sucks, because it's not a person. It's an AI. A big part of being a senior dev is making less capable coders productive, be they fleshy or algebraic. I fucking love this article, man. I talk about this so often, especially with like companies that I'm advising. They'll often insist like, we can only hire senior engineers because junior engineers write bad code and they take things down. What you're saying when you say that is that you're a junior engineer. Experienced engineers aren't writing better code than juniors. They are building better systems than juniors. They are building systems that are resilient to the changes that these less experienced engineers would make. I'm going to say a bold thing, and I am sorry to everybody affected by this one. I am still the best developer at Ping. Julius is giving me a run for my fucking money. I'll give him credit there. But I am still the most like in the know, understanding of how all the parts come together and the system design that makes T3 chat and all the other things we built function. Other than upload thing, I don't know shit about how it works now. Julius is fully taking that over. But T3 chat, I am the one who gets how it works. I need you to understand that this is not me bragging. It's actually the opposite. I am ashamed of the fact that up until the convex port, any change to our data layer or our sync engine had to be done by me. Because if anyone else touched it, it would break. Because I did a terrible job architecting it. I made it work and it solved a bunch of problems that were really hard to solve. I was proud of the benefits we got from it. But I designed something that sucked to work in unless you were deeply experienced in the intricacies of those sync engines. And I was close to buying out a company because one person there was so good at sync engine design stuff that I knew if I acquired them, he could take over it for me. And I needed someone that good. And then I accepted reality, which is that we're building a chat app that is wrapping LLMs. We don't need one of the 3 best engineers in the world to maintain our data layer. I need to fix the shit. I need to grow up, be a good engineer, and make it so people who are not as absurd as I am can make something of this quality and can make things that don't take down production when we make changes. I needed an architecture that wasn't just capable, wasn't just functional, wasn't just able to solve these problems. I needed an architecture that the rest of my team could make changes to confidently. And we now have that with the convex change. I had to eat a lot of my own ego because there were things that I convinced myself we did better with my sync engine than convex could. And I was wrong, and I got over it. And the more we dove in, the more I realized not only is this architecture way better and easier to understand, now everyone on the team can contribute to it. Now everyone can add new features. Now we are unblocked from all the cool things we want to ship. We don't need Theo to do the work anymore. That also means we don't need other employees to either. We can have whole features now implemented by agents because the code is simple enough. All of the infra lives in a directory that's named convex. And with a single link to the documentation, everything that's needed for that exists right there. That is so cool. Instead of buying a company for like $1 million, I moved over to a better architecture that made more sense for what we were doing, that was easier to maintain. And now I'm hiring interns that are in high school and they are shipping unbelievably great stuff. To be fair, that intern is particularly cracked. He'll be a better dev than me in like 6 months. That aside, the fact that now the whole team can contribute is a level up for me. To stay on the architecture I built would be a cope, me pretending that I am a great engineer and this needs that type of engineering, when in reality, a truly senior developer, somebody who's higher in their experience chain, somebody who would have like a staff position at a company, they're not writing really complex code. They are thinking through complex problems so they can write simple enough code that everyone else can contribute. Back to the article, because I love this. Any one sentence can set me off on a tangent because it's so good. Using agents well is both a skill and an engineering project all on its own, of prompts, indices, and especially tooling. LLMs should only be producing shitty code if you let them. Yes, absolutely yes. Maybe the current confusion is about who's doing what work. Today, LLMs do a lot of typing, Googling, and test cases, and edit, compile, test, debug cycles. Also, 100% of all the bash code you should author ever again. Sorry, bash cop. We have someone who can write the bash for us now. I haven't written a complex bash command in such a long time. I just have AI do it every time now. But even the most Claude-poisoned, serious developers in the world still own curation, judgment, guidance, and direction. Now let's stop kidding ourselves about how good our human-first cuts really are. I will never pretend that my code is good on the first pass. I am regularly impressed that the shit that I put out the first try actually runs. It's pretty nuts. But it's bad at Rust. It's hard to get a good tool chain for brainfuck too. Life's tough in the aluminum siding business. That's hilarious. I will say something I have been really surprised with is the people who are working on these deep, obnoxious, complex things falling in love with tools like Cursor. Two examples that immediately come to mind, because these were things that I just straight up thought there isn't enough data. There's no way these tools will ever have work being done with AI stuff. Those two were Bun, specifically the Zig code base. Another one I thought a lot about is Porphyr, the Wasm JS runtime. These are two projects that I have the highest of high respects for. They're both JS runtimes, Bun's a lot more too, but these two things are some of the most terrifying code bases I have ever read. These code bases are doing absurd things that no normal dev should ever have to write, that there are no references for online at all right now. And it does them really well. I know so many people at Bun that say they tab complete 80% of their work now. It's still not that great when you command I and try to get it to generate a whole feature for you, but it is super good within the context of the file of auto-completing as you go. Porphyr is another one of those super complex things where it's doing crazy WASM assembly browser code. And I talk with the dev a lot. Canada Honk is one of the smartest people I know, and watching them slowly get AI pilled has been a huge oh shit moment for me. Honestly, one of the biggest I have had was having them reach out like, hey, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this new model. I've been using it in Cursor and it's been helping me a lot for my work. I'm like, wait, you're using Cursor for your work now? What? The smartest people I know are all making the plunge. And I never thought I would see that day. My assumption was we'd see a lot of people vibe coding on Bolt or V0 or Lovable, and then a bunch of smart people writing the hard parts behind the scenes. And to be clear, that is happening. But those same smart people are now behind the scenes using tools like Cursor and Claude Code and Codex and all this stuff to do the busy parts of their work too. Because even the best devs are mostly doing busy work because most code is tedious and dumb. If I was to go through my snitching bench code base here and read through what is or isn't tedious, imports, most tedious thing in the world. That's 22 lines of bullshit. Type definitions, useful, but tedious as hell. More and more of them. We haven't even gotten to actual code and we're 60 lines in. That's over a fifth of the way through this file. Tests to run. This is a giant JSON blob of the tests I want to run. And if I want to change this from email to contact, watch what happens. Tab. I don't want that one. Go down here. Oh, I do want to change that one. Look at that. That is so good. When you make these types of changes, the tedious parts are way faster. So this is all still tedious code. Here we are filtering and sorting markdown, adding it to this input messages field, then returning it. This entire, we are now 130 lines into a 400 line file, and it's all just tedious bullshit. That's where we're at. Also, another fun one, Ghosty, the terminal that I use, which is all Zig machine code. Apparently, Mitchell said he's auto-completing most of the code even he is writing. I would really love for these editors to ship a feature where it tracks what percentage of code is tab completed or not, so I could have my own numbers, because I would guess I'm in the 60 to 70% range nowadays at least, where tab complete, I'll do a thing once and then tab complete the rest of it. It's so nice. We are there now. Even Gabriel is surprised by this, and I was too. It took me a while to realize these smart people are doing this shit. Also, yeah, Cursor at the end of the year. I want it so bad. We will absolutely be doing a T3 chat wrapped of some form. I got to write a lot of code for that. Well, agents have to write a lot of code for that, but you get the idea. A lot of skepticism probably isn't really about LLMs. It's projection. People say LLMs can't code. What they really mean is LLMs can't write Rust. Fair enough. But people select languages in part based on how well LLMs work with them. So Rust people should get on that. And they surely will. The Rust community takes tooling seriously. Also, I've had people in chat since I started talking about this saying that it's actually really good at writing Rust too. That said, the author mostly writes in Go. I'm confident that the designers of the Go programming language didn't set out to produce the most LLM legible language in the industry. They succeeded nonetheless because Go has just enough type safety, an extensive standard library, and a culture that prizes often repetitive idiom. LLMs kick ass at generating it. All this is to say, I write some Rust, I like it fine. If LLMs and Rust aren't working for you, I feel you. But if that's your whole thing, we're not having the same argument. What about the craft? Do you like fine Japanese woodworking? All the hand tools and sashimono joinery? Me too. Do it on your own time. I have a basic woodshop in my basement. I could get a lot of satisfaction from building a table. And if that table is a workbench or a grill table, sure, I'll build it. But if I need like a table to be able to sit at in my office, I buy a fucking table. This is so good. I love this article so much. Professional software developers are in the business of solving practical problems for people with code. We are not, in our day jobs, artisans. Steve Jobs was wrong. We do not need to carve the unseen feet into the sculpture. Nobody cares if the logic board traces are pleasingly routed. If anything we build endures, it won't be because the code base was beautiful. I bet if we took a bunch of startups and measured how beautiful their code base was relative to how likely they were to succeed, if anything, it's an inverse ratio. Probably no correlation, but my guess is inverse. Besides, that's not what really happens. If you're taking time carefully golfing functions down into graceful, fluent, minimal functional expressions, alarm bells should ring. You're yak shaving. I'll say my CTO Mark has a lot of fun playing code golf with like advent of code. He'll see how effectively he can squeeze the entire solution down to like one line of code. And that's really fun and cool, but he's doing it for advent of code, not for the things we're shipping to our users. And knowing the difference there is essential. Let fun code be fun, let work code be work. Make work code easy enough that you can have fun doing it. The real work has depleted your focus. You're not building, you're self-soothing. Whew, bars. That one got me speechless. I've done that a lot. I'm just going to keep going because that's going to hurt deep. Oof. But wait for it. That's something LLMs are good for. They devour schlep and clear a path to the important stuff where your judgment and value actually matters. This has been my experience a ton. When I realized that if I instead of starting the project as soon as I have the idea, then running into problems and spending a week trying to fix it, if I just put more thought in initially, like how do I want to architect this? How do I want the parts to come together? I get the idea for it in my head. I might spend 3 times more time thinking about it before I start, but then the LLM can take my thoughts, take my prompt on how I want this to work, get something 70% of the way there relatively quick, and then I can do in 3 hours of thinking and 1 hour of work what used to take 1 hour of thinking, 10 hours of work, and then 10 more hours of thinking after. It's entirely flipped how I structure work in my head and in my practice. And it means I can spend more time on the thing that honestly to me is more fun, which is structuring and architecting how all the parts come together. I spend a lot more time in Excalibur on my streams than I do in my editor. And that's not just for show. That's how I work and think. I spend much more time in my day job writing code in here, not on there. But the mediocrity. As a mid-late career coder, I've come to appreciate mediocrity. You should be so lucky as to have it flowing almost effortlessly from a tap. We all write mediocre code. Mediocre code is often fine. Not all code is equally important. Some code should be mediocre. Maximum effort on a random unit test, you're doing something wrong. Your team lead should correct you. Developers all love to preen about the code. They worry LLMs will lower the ceiling for quality, maybe, but they're also raising the floor. Gemini's floor is higher than my own. My code looks nice, but it's not as thorough. LLM code is repetitive, but mine includes dumb contortions where I got too clever trying to dry things up. I just showed one of those where I was popping instead of shifting. That's a mistake the agent would probably not have made. LLMs aren't mediocre on every axis. They almost certainly have a bigger bag of algorithmic tricks than you do. Radix tries, topological sorts, graph reductions, and LDPC codes. I'll say, I'm a big functional programming bro. I still forget the specific order of things when writing a reducer in JavaScript. The fact that it can be written by itself is still so magical to me. It's so nice. Humans romanticize rsync. Andrew even wrote a paper about it. To an LLM, it might not be that much more interesting than a SQL join. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It doesn't matter. If truly mediocre code is all we ever get from an LLM, that's still huge. It's that much less mediocre code that humans have to write. I absolutely agree there. Most code either is mediocre or probably should be, but that means most humans are writing mediocre code all the time. And if AI can take that from us, that's massive. It's let me be much more comfortable maintaining much larger amounts of code because I'm not the one doing it. It's great. But it'll never be AGI. I don't give a shit. Smart practitioners get wound up by the AI and VC hype cycle. I can't blame them, but it's not an argument. Things either work or they don't, no matter what Jensen Huang has to say about it. But they're taking our jobs. So does open source. We used to pay good money for databases. That's actually a hilarious point. That is actually a really funny point. We're a field premised on automating other people's jobs away. Productivity gains, says the economists. You get what that means, right? Fewer people doing the same stuff. Talk to a travel agent lately, or a floor broker, or a record store clerk, or darkroom tech. When this argument comes up, libertarian-leaning VCs start the chant, lamplighters, creative destruction, new kinds of work. Maybe. But I'm not hypnotized. I have no fucking clue whether we're going to be better off after LLMs. Things could get a lot worse. LLMs really might displace many software developers. It's not a high horse we get to ride. Our jobs are just as much in tech's line of fire as everyone else's have been for the last 3 decades. We're not East Coast dock workers. We won't stop progress on our own. But that's plagiarism. Artificial intelligence is profoundly, and probably unfairly, threatening to visual artists in ways that might be hard to appreciate if you don't work in the arts. We imagine artists spending their working hours pushing the limits of expression. But the median artist isn't producing gallery pieces. They produce on brief, turning out component illustrations and compositions for magazine covers, museum displays, motion graphics, and game assets. I'll even take some fault here. I kind of feel bad for my editor Phase. He works his ass off, and he is an incredibly talented video editor. He does not get to show off his talents much running this channel. He will have a lot of fun in the intro, because the intro is really important, and as I'm sure you guys have seen, the first 30 to 60 seconds, he'll put the extra effort in to really flex his skill and make it more compelling. But the rest is him turning my nonsense rant into a shorter, slightly less nonsense rant. Occasionally, there's the fun piecemealing of I filmed something else later, he has to stuff it in the right spot, but none of that is showing off his technical capabilities as an editor. If he could automate more of that work and his editing tools made those parts easier, he could spend more time on the fun things like the fancy start of the videos. He could work with more people and get more done. Automating the frustrating parts of his job might mean he can take someone else's job, but more importantly, it means he can spend time on the parts he finds fun that also help make my videos better. There is a future where AI can help improve our pipeline in the videos, but right now, we don't need AI for my video process because Phase is a fucking god and you can edit an hour-long video in under an hour. So as much as we want to pretend arts are about the art, they aren't very often. The vast majority of art is meant to fill a space, not fill your heart. And it sucks that there are people who dedicate their lives to making heartfelt pieces that have no path to make money on it. But I come from the music world. This has been the case the entire time I was exploring and still am deep in the music world. The vast majority of people watching this video make more money than musicians that you listen to on Spotify. Not the biggest ones, but the medium-sized ones. I know a lot of rappers that seem really big that make a lot less money than my team does. And that sucks. The arts not being compensated properly for their work has been a shitty thing for a very, very, very long time. AI makes it more visible, but it doesn't necessarily make it a new problem. The problem's always existed. We're just using this existing problem to be mad at a thing that we want to be mad at. And that sucks. But it is what it is. LLMs easily, to a point where it's alarming, can clear industry quality bars. Gallingly, one of the things they're best at is churning out just good enough facsimiles of human creative work. I have a family in visual arts, the author, not me. He can't talk to them about LLMs. He doesn't blame them, though. They're probably not wrong, because this is a huge, harmful impact on their world. Meanwhile, software devs spot code fragments seemingly lifted from public repos on GitHub, and they lose their shit. What about licensing? You're a lawyer, I defer. But if you're a software dev playing this card, cut me a little slack as I ask you to shove this concern up your ass. No profession has demonstrated more contempt for intellectual property. Bars. The median dev thinks Star Wars and Daft Punk are public commons. The great cultural project of developers has been opposing any protection that might inconvenience a monetizable media sharing site. It's really weird how we decided what creators do and don't deserve to get paid. Movie directors, they deserve millions. Authors and musicians, meh, should be free. I'll support if I want. YouTubers, screw them. I'm skipping the ad. The replies on this are mostly people saying, how dare you think you deserve to be paid as a YouTuber? No one likes ads. That should all be free. And that all came from a separate original post that was complaining about how books should always be free because information should be free. My new video has been up for 7 minutes. The sponsor block people have already submitted timestamps. These people are insane. Someone said, shout out to those hardworking folks. The really hard work of submitting 2 timestamps. They work so hard. I swear you guys value their work more than the creators making the content. To which I got ratioed with someone saying yes. You fuckers don't care about intellectual property. I know that for a fact. So stop pretending you do now because AI is good. I don't want to get into the sponsor block thing. I'll do this another time. My quick TLDR is that if you watch the first 5 seconds of my ad, think it's not relevant to you and skip it, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you automating that. I love the little button that appears in YouTube with the skip button. And if it comes up when you don't think the thing is relevant to you and you click it, cool, awesome. It's my job to make the ad relevant to you. And if I fail at that, awesome, skip away. But if you install a tool that automatically skips it before you know if it's relevant or not, you are stealing. That is theft. You don't care about the hundreds of hours I and my team put in and the fact that those sponsors are the only reason the channel can run, and you value someone spending 5 seconds to submit a timestamp more than the hundreds of hours I and my team put in. You're a bad person, you're operating in bad faith, and you better shut the fuck up about AI taking your job. Anyways, so back to the article. This is very much a thing in the world that we are in here. The great cultural project of developers has been opposing any protection that might inconvenience a monetizable media sharing site. Or more importantly, it might be protection that inconveniences you as the viewer because you have to spend 5 seconds deciding if the ad is relevant to you or not. When they fail at policy, they route around it with coercion. They stand up global-scale piracy networks and sneer at anybody who so much as tries to preserve a new release window for a TV show. Call any of this out if you want to watch a TED Talk about how hard it is to stream The Expanse on LibreWolf. Yeah, we get it. You don't believe in IPR. Then shut the fuck up about IPR. Reap the whirlwind. If you have given 0 shits about intellectual property until now, shut up. Because I know most of you don't, so shut up about it. It's all special pleading anyways. LLMs digest code further than you do. This is another point. Like, if we're talking about how transformed the thing is, if I read some source code and it goes deep in my head somewhere, and then I accidentally write the exact same code later on, the LLM changed it more than I did. And the LLM is considered copying more than I am. If you don't believe a typeface designer can stake a moral claim on the terminals and counters of a letter form, you sure as hell can't be possessive about a red-black tree. Bars. Positive case, Redux. When I started writing a couple days ago, I wrote a section to level set the state of the art of LLM-assisted programming. A bluefish fillet has a longer shelf life than an LLM take. In the time it took you to read this, everything changed. Kids today don't use agents, they use asynchronous agents. They wake up, free associate 13 different things from their LLMs to work on, make a coffee, fill out a TPS report, drive to the Mars Cheese Castle, and then check their notifications. They got 13 PRs to review. 3 get tossed and reprompted, 5 of them get the same feedback a junior dev gets, and 5 get merged. I'm sipping rocket fuel right now, a friend tells me. The folks on my team who aren't embracing AI, it's like they're standing still. He's not bullshitting me. He doesn't work in the SFBA. He's got no reason to lie. There's plenty of things I can't trust an LLM with. No LLM has any of access to prod here. But I've been first responder on an incident and fed 4.0, not O4 Mini, not a smarter reasoning model, just bog standard 4.0, log transcripts, and watched it in seconds spot LVM metadata corruption issues on a host we've been complaining about for months. Am I better than an LLM agent at interrogating open source logs and honeycomb traces? No. No, I am not. To the consternation of many of my friends, I am not a radical or a futurist. I am a statist. He uses some weird fucking words. I believe in the haphazard perseverance of complex systems, of institutions, of reversions to the mean. I write Go and Python code. I'm not a Kool-Aid drinker, but something real is happening. My smartest friends are blowing it off. Maybe I persuade you. Probably I don't. But we need to be done making space for bad arguments. I agree. It's so tiring that the anti-AI people are just they're not talking about things that are real problems, because I want to have those conversations. It's always so frustrating to me when there's a good, nuanced conversation about problems that we can have, but we can't because the conversation is so rotted with people being wrong about it. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Somebody in chat said, just call them stupid. I wish I could. I do. But there are really smart people who still think this way. They are just deluded. And it's different. It is really different. And we need to recognize that difference because there are still smart people who think this way. More and more of them are coming around to it. But there are a lot of people who still think that way. Depends on how long it takes for them to come around. I think most of them will. So many people I was concerned wouldn't have. And I would like to think the rest will too. Let's finish this article up because this has been fucking phenomenal. But I'm tired of hearing about it. And here is where I rejoin your company. I read Simon Willison's posts, and that's all I really need. Awesome. Then he already knows who I am because Simon did a post about my thing recently. That's one of my highest honors, is that Simon did an article about my LLM snitch benchmark. That was the oh shit, I'm having a real impact on the space moment for me that I was really hyped about. That was so cool. I love his blog. For those who don't know, Simon Willison is one of the creators of Django, and he has become one of the best AI research people in the industry. And that is enough for you to keep up. Or maybe watch my videos. I think they're fun. But the hype bubble sucks, and I get that. And if you don't want to be part of it, don't be part of it. But don't let the hype bubble keep you from trying out these tools. But all day, every day, a sizable chunk of the front page of HN is allocated to LLMs. Incremental model updates, startups doing things with agents, LLM tutorials, screeds against LLMs. It's annoying. But AI is also incredibly, a word I use advisedly, important. It's getting the same kind of attention that smartphones got in 2008, and not as much as the internet got. That seems about right. I think this is going to get clearer over the next year. The cool kid hotness about stochastic parrots and vibe coding can't survive much more contact with reality. I'm talking about these people, but I meant what I've said. They're smarter than me. And when they get over this effication, they're going to make coding agents profoundly more effective than they are today. That is such a phenomenal ender to one of the best blog posts I have ever fucking read. I had a feeling when I read the first paragraph that this needed to be a video. I was right. To Thomas, thank you. You have more concretely, clearly, and entertainingly put a thing I have been feeling for a bit now and said the things I was scared to, specifically saying that these people are smarter than you are and they are missing out on this. I would have felt insane saying it myself, and I am so thankful you did, so I don't have to say it alone. On one hand, I am stealing his blog post for content, but on the other hand, he gave me the confidence to finally say this, and I didn't have it before. So a huge shout out to Thomas. I implore you guys, give him a follow. We're putting his Twitter link above the link to this article in the description for a reason. If someone can write this, they have a lot more to offer to the world. And I have a ton of respect for him for the way that he put this together. Thank you all for watching this with me. What a journey it has been. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Until next time, peace, nerds.